What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about Optimism, which is a layer 2 scaling solution for Ethereum. So if you're bullish on Ethereum, you're probably going to be a little bit bullish, at least for Optimism. Now, Optimism is planning on releasing a token, the OP token. Today we're going to be talking about that and also just talking about what is Optimism in the first place and what does it do. And then we're even going to get into a little bit of a speculation, which is that Coinbase shows price page for Optimism, suggesting a token could be on the way. And then we're even going to take a look at what is Optimism compared to Arbitrum, which is another popular layer 2 scaling solution that uses optimistic rollups. Let's talk about it. And if you guys want to receive a 9 to 13% APY on a stablecoin such as USDC, then make sure to sign up with the link in the description below for HODLNOT, and you guys can receive a $30 USDC equivalent when you do. Also, make sure to check out the Telegram group where I'm going to be sharing a lot of on-chain analysis and also just channel updates as well. And of course, if you guys want to see more content just like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now, and let's get into this video. So when we're taking a look at some new weekly Twitter followers of layer 2 scaling solutions, you can see here that Polygon has actually been kind of the dominant one when we're taking a look at just an overall time frame of the past since January of 21 to the past year. Now, if we just take a look year to date, we can see here that Polygon has been the dominant layer 2 solution, and you can just see that here in and amongst this chart of on-chain data. And then you can actually see here in April there was a big bump up, and what is that due to? Well, that's actually due to Optimism and their Twitter page. So I thought this was a pretty interesting on-chain statistic, and you can see here the actual growth of what's happening with Optimism, and this is due to a couple things like their airdrop, which they announced, which we're going to be talking about, and a couple of other things in some big announcements like their token in general. So let's also keep moving along here. If you guys want to take a look at this, you can see here that Coinbase shows price page for Optimism, suggesting a token could be on the way. So there's a lot of talk right now about what's going to happen and when they could actually release their token. If you want to take a look at the value locked of Ethereum optimistic rollups, you can see here that since really September of 2021, you can see how most of it actually starts to take off, with Arbitrum actually being the dominant layer 2 optimistic rollup. And so you can see that it's pretty much been battling with Optimism and Metis Andromeda, and you can see here that, you know, it's pretty much just been going at it with all of them. So, but you can also take a look and see that Arbitrum definitely has the majority of total value locked, and that more people are locking on Arbitrum. So let's get into why and also what is optimistic rollups in the first place, and then we're going to even compare it with Arbitrum and see what the differences are. Ethereum rollup Optimism launches DAO and announces long-awaited airdrop. So this is a big thing. They pretty much announced that they are going to be doing an airdrop, and a lot of people are pretty much hyped for this, and I believe they actually closed their airdrop, so they can't give it out to any more people. There was already enough people that signed up, and there was a couple of different criteria that had to be met. Like, you had to be an avid Ethereum user, you had to be an avid layer 2 user, and a couple of other things, I believe. So the popular Ethereum layer 2 rollup Optimism announced on Tuesday that it will be forming a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO, dubbed the Optimism Collective. Along with this news, Optimism set crypto Twitter alight with the announcement of a long-awaited Optimism token and airdrop. So the token is actually going to be OP. So optimistic rollups. Layer 2 rollups such as Optimism allows users to use some Ethereum apps more cheaply without losing the network's essential security guarantees. They're the primary way Ethereum is working to scale the ecosystem in the face of high gas fees and relatively low transaction speeds. Optimism scales the Ethereum network by processing transactions and executing smart contracts on a separate rollup specific chain. The data processed on Optimism gets bundled up and passed back down to Ethereum, where Ethereum network actors can check whether the data is valid. So-called optimistic rollups like Optimism assume transactions are true once they make it to Ethereum layer 1 chain, and they can give network validators a period of 7 days to dispute transactions that they believe to be false. And that differs from so-called ZK rollups, or like Loopring, which predominantly uses, which use complicated cryptography to validate transactions rather than assume their validity outright. So you can kind of think of optimistic rollups as a way that they bundle up a lot of transactions into one, and therefore make making the speed much faster. With around $500 million in total value locked, or TVL, according to DeFi Llama, Optimism is the second largest Ethereum rollup, and its primary competitor in the optimistic rollup market is Arbitrum, which has a total value locked of $2 billion and has yet to launch its own token. So like I said, it's the main competitor, and Arbitrum is definitely winning the market right now when it comes to total value locked and comparing it that way. And we're going to get over the differences as well and some of the nuances between the two. And so this was on the Optimism website, introducing the Optimism Collective. The Optimism Collective is a large-scale experiment in digital democratic governance built to drive rapid and sustainable growth of a decentralized ecosystem and stewarded by the newly formed Optimism Foundation. The collective is a band of communities, companies, and citizens united by a mutually beneficial pact to adhere to the axiom of impact equals profit, and this is outlined in depth in the optimistic vision. So tokens and citizens. The Optimism Collective will be governed co-equally by two houses, the Citizens House and the Tokens House. And you can see that here with the Token House with project incentives, protocol upgrades, treasury funds, and the token is transferable, network parameters, and granting citizenships. And then you can see here under the Citizens House, retroactive public goods funding. Citizenship is non-transferable. So the Token House is established by an airdrop, bringing the first thousands of people who have engaged in positive sum community-oriented behavior. Token holders will be able to vote on protocol upgrades, project incentives as a part of the governance fund. And then the Citizens House. The Citizens House will facilitate and govern a process to distribute retroactive public goods funding generated from the revenue collected by the network. And citizenship will be conferred by soulbound, non-transferable NFTs, and the set of citizens will grow over time as the Optimism community grows. The Citizen House is the vehicle which enables the distribution of power away from any centralized organization to a human-centric, non-plutocratic mechanism. And together, these two houses will help direct the revenue generated from the Optimism Layer 2 efforts that promotes public goods and help grow the collective. And the Citizens House will launch later in 2022. And together, the two houses of the collective will drive a powerful flywheel, funding the public goods that make Optimism block space more valuable, leading to more revenue for public goods and so on. Introducing OP. OP, the token, governs upgrades to the protocol and network parameters and creates an ongoing system of incentives for projects and users in the Optimism ecosystem. So the OP token will actually not just have one airdrop, it'll have an entire season of airdrops. OP airdrop number 1 goes live in Q2, and if you're an Ethereum user, not just an Optimism user, you can actually see if you can actually get that. And then the big one is token distribution. And so the initial supply of OP is actually going to be 4 billion tokens. OP is broken down into the following categories: retroactive public goods funding, 20%, and then 17% to the sugar daddies or the investors. Core contributors is 19%, 25% to the ecosystem fund, and then 19% for airdrops and for user airdrops. So it looks like it's going to be, I'm guessing it's going to be probably under $1. Let's compare it to another project that has 4 billion tokens right now and see where the price could actually go. And so when we're comparing this to other market caps and tokens, the token of Rose, or it's on the Oasis network, has actually a circulating supply right now of 3.4 billion. So, not necessarily 4 billion, but it's going to have a total supply of 10 billion, but as of right now, it's close to 3.5 billion, and it's at a price of 17 cents right now. When we're taking a look at Phantom actually right now is a circulating supply of 2.5 billion, and it's under $1 at this price point. And yeah, like I said, it's going to have a max supply of 3.1 billion right now, but currently it has a circulating supply of 2.5 billion. So it's going to be my guess and just my speculation. This could be totally wrong. This is not financial advice, but I'm guessing that the token is going to be in amongst the price point of possibly around 40 cents to even over $1, but probably not more so than $3. That's kind of my guess, just off of what I'm reading here, given that it's going to be 4 billion tokens. So Optimism will unlock over the course of 4 years as follows. You can see here that core contributors, sugar daddies, or the investors, community ecosystem fund, and then you can see the community user airdrop, and that's going to unlock over the course of 4 years. Now let's talk about the differences between Arbitrum and Optimism. So what's the difference between these Ethereum rollups? This is a great article, and let's go over this. So first of all, what are rollups? So a blockchain's main network or main chain, the default network, is often called layer 1. And these are Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, etc. And some of them, such as Solana or Binance Smart Chain, work with a higher network capacity from the get-go. The downside of this approach is that the large memory blocks are more difficult to verify, resulting in the blockchain centralization. Now, Ethereum is one of the most decentralized blockchain, hence that it actually needs help with layer 2 networks. And interestingly, even below layer 1, there is actually a layer 0 blockchain like Polkadot, and this is a network of networks in which layer 1 blockchains become parachains. So if you were to picture this congested highway, then layer 2 protocols / networks are additional highways plugged into them. And of course, in the digital space, we deal with data bits instead of cars, so they're much easier to handle, and handling network congestion is exactly what rollups do. Layer 2 network rollups roll up hundreds of transactions into one and transfer them to themselves and then return them back to layer 1 in their compact form. To push the previous analogy further, it would be like fusing hundreds of cars into one vehicle, except none of the passengers and important bits would get lost in the transit. Instead, the empty seats and wheels would be removed as redundant. So how are Arbitrum and Optimism similar? If both Arbitrum and Optimism are layer 2 rollups for Ethereum, why have different ones? And the core purpose of rollups is to perform 2 actions: remove the bulk of the main chain's traffic to off-chain layer 2, and interact with the main chain smart contract that processes withdrawals / deposits and verifies off-chain transactions. The verification part is critical because off-chain data needs to be proven to be authentic. Arbitrum and Optimism are similar in that they use fraud proofs, which are ideal for scaling solutions because they are deployed only when invalid blocks are detected, instead of with every transaction, and in turn this saves the computational resources of the network. Also, instant finality, the transactions are finalized in the moment the block is created, instead of undergoing a series of confirmations. And once again, this makes for a low latency, high throughput network. There's also cross-chain bridges, allowing tokens to move between layer 1 and layer 2. And although both optimistic rollups or ORs and Arbitrum drastically lower Ethereum gas fees, there are key differences in how they verify proofs and how they handle future compatibility issues. So what's the difference? Well, to begin with, it's important to understand that the Optimism team first created rollups. As often happens in the software field, Arbitrum team then tweaked its source code, which led to 2 different layer scalability solutions. So fraud-proof verification. The most important difference is that Optimism rollup uses a single round fraud proof, while Arbitrum uses multi-round fraud proofs. So why is this important? Well, Optimism's single round fraud proof, or FP, relies on layer 1 to execute the entire L2 transaction, and this way the FP verification is instant. However, this exerts greater cost because on-chain layer 1 execution costs more gas, and the layer 2 fee itself is limited by the L1 gas block. And in contrast, Arbitrum uses a fine-combing approach to FP verification. By using multi-round FP, Arbitrum focuses on a singular point of transaction disagreement, and in turn this translates to a higher network performance. And likewise, because layer 2 transactions are not entirely executed on layer 1, its gas block limit is rendered to irrelevant. So as you can see here, the Arbitrum team pretty much saw what Optimism was doing with their rollups and thought pretty much, what could they improve? And as you can see, they improved that by a bit, offering cheaper fees and a little bit faster transactions. And so when it comes to bridging and tokens, as previously noted, both Arbitrum and Optimism uses bridges to interact with other blockchains and make the flow of tokens happen. However, where Arbitrum employs a universal and permissionless bridge for all tokens, Optimism deploys dedicated bridges when the market demands are ripe. And lastly, although both rollups don't have their own tokens yet because Optimism will, Optimism uses wrapped ETH or WETH or WETH, and this is akin to a stablecoin pegged to ETH in a 1-to-1 ratio. Although for cross-chain ERC20 compatibility, Arbitrum has native ETH support without needing such extra steps. Although Optimism was first developed, the market has already spoken in favor of Arbitrum. So anyways guys, what do you think about the future of Optimism, and where do you think the token is going to go? I know it's extremely hard to gauge, but I think it's kind of interesting that they're dropping a token. And what's interesting is that it seems like Arbitrum seems to be a little bit better because they pretty much saw what Optimism was doing with their rollups, and then they kind of decided, okay, these are some of the areas that they need to improve. Let's improve upon it, and here we go. Bang, let's improve upon it. And what's interesting as well is that comparing the total value locked, you could see earlier that the total value locked on Arbitrum is much bigger than Optimism. And what's interesting is that Arbitrum doesn't even have a token release yet. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. My camera died, so I can't pull to that camera. And also, hey, who's that guy, right? Kind of interesting to see. So anyways, guys, have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.